did you know that the average company loses between 10 and 30% of their customers every year? So today we are talking about customer health.
Customer health is the lifeblood of a successful SaaS business. A barometer for understanding what they're doing, their engagement, the retention, and their satisfaction with your product.
We've got 4 ways that you can look at customer health. We've got health scores, engagement trends, support interactions, and behavioral indicators.
To me, it's about predicting your renewals, identifying your churn risks, and doing something about it.
Why ultimately does that matter? Like, why should someone watching this pay attention to customer health?
The data will actually get you there faster. If you onboard people well, you're more likely to keep them. And I think I now view it as a strategy rather than just a metric.
Is that we think 2025 is going to be the year of retention. Hey, and thanks for joining us on Marketplace Growth. My name is Pete Preston, and I'm joined by Kate Caldecott, one of the co-founders here. We're talking about losing customers today, because that is a huge thing in SaaS. And what you and I were talking about recently is that we think 2025 is going to be the year of retention. We're going to talk about customer health and keeping 10 to 30% number as low as you possibly can with a focus on customer health. And I thought a good place to start might be defining what customer health actually means. You've got a good one. You want to share that with us?
Well, for me, it's about that you're really good at understanding the relationship between your business, yourself, and your customers. And so customer health is your way of having a barometer for understanding what they're doing, their engagement, the retention, and their satisfaction with your product. It's kind of like the way that you measure to make sure you're on track.
And then what can you do if you use that customer health signals, you understand customer satisfaction, engagement, retention, all that sort of stuff? What can you do with that? Because I think this is the important bit.
You know, the SaaS game is all about a numbers game. So for me, it's about predicting your renewals. It's about identifying your churn risks and doing something about it. But I think just as important is it also guides your strategic actions about where and what you develop, how you design your teams, how you talk about things in your marketing.
Yeah. And it really is, it reaches across an entire company. I think when we first started looking at customer health, we really focused on customer success teams. But the reality is, if you're in product, marketing, sales, success, support, leadership, everyone is actually thinking about customer health. We've got 4 ways that you can kind of look at customer health here. We've got health scores, engagement trends, support interactions, and behavioral indicators. So sort of qualitative stuff as well as quantitative stuff. And what are your feelings on that quantitative, which is studying the data, the hard data, versus the qualitative?
Well, I think for a start, we're all got different capacities and abilities to do this stuff and different needs and priorities. So at the absolute Rolls Royce end is companies that have teams of people to do this stuff. They have the big systems that actually punch all of this stuff in. They're very complicated to use. They're expensive. And for most of us, that's kind of out of reach. Then we have the group that is starting, I think, to measure stuff. They're looking at their events, they're counting. They're probably got quite a lot of manuals, templates, spreadsheets, etc. And, you know, that's good. You get your insights to do your baseline. But for me, it's sustainability of all of that and really working your insights. And then you've got your last group who are probably using their interactions with their customers as their measure of health. So, you know, if they're, which is more the qual stuff. So to me, there's almost 3 camps. And so when you're looking at customer health, you've kind of got to decide how much am I going to invest in this? And I'm very much of the opinion that don't overwork stuff. And often the 80-20 is good enough, which probably to sophisticated data analysts probably go, oh, she's a heathen. But you know, I think you can get a very good sense. And when we had our last product, we had a very good sense of who are our best customers. We looked at all of this stuff. We had engagement scoring. We had churn plan, you know what? So we were very focused because if you get your metrics right, you will have a successful business. Customer health is the lifeblood of a successful SaaS business.
Definitely agree with you on that one, I think. And really, if you boil that down further, to me anyway, that quantitative side of things where you study actually what they're doing in the product, because I'm sure you've had a similar experience, but you're told one thing, but then you see another in the data, right? And it's not to call anyone a liar or anything like that. I think sometimes I know I'm guilty of thinking that I use something more than I actually do. So I'd probably be surprised at how utilization rates of my own of certain tools where I think I'm in there daily, but I'm probably not. And then the behavioral qualitative side of things is nice to have, but not need to have, I think, until you hit a certain threshold, probably.
Well, I would probably push back slightly on that statement in that it is important But in terms of you making smarter decisions, the data will actually get you there faster than the ad hoc behavioral stuff. You'll get your insights and your trends, but you won't know if a feature is working really well or a customer's about to churn or any of that unless you actually have the product usage data.
Yeah, I agree. I think we are in agreement on that. Maybe just saying it slightly differently. So,
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
I'm going to move us on. What defines good customer health, a healthy customer? What could that look like? Because that will look different for everybody. But speaking in sort of generalities and from your experience, having built several products and companies, what does a healthy customer look like?
Well, depending on the nature of the product, it can take time to get to this point, but I have a sense of how well activated they are, how well they're actually using the product so they're actually getting the value. So if they're ticking those boxes, and because we use data analytics, the engagement scores are healthy. So to me, a rising score or a maintenance score, if it's quite high, to me there's that. Their adoption is good. They're coming in, their frequency is good. They also, in terms of your users who are using your product within an account, you've got a good spread of people, that you don't just have one person using it really deeply and it's a ghost town for everyone else. So for me, the product is actually well used, depth and breadth. That's the stuff, the bread and butter. And then on the side, you're getting your support tickets and your reviews and things, and that's all ticking over and that's giving you your feedback. But for me, if you get the other stuff right, probably means that you're the good reviews and your support tickets, because of the way you're actually thinking more holistically about your customer.
Yeah. Okay. So if I were to summarize that, they're meeting the engagement, sort of the patterns that you would expect them to meet within the product, which again, from experience, you and I went through this with a few customers at Proforma, where being a form builder, lots of different ways to use that. Some customers only needed it. They would build a form and almost hope that they would never use it because it was there to capture incidents, like major incidents. And so for them, the value was having it there, not necessarily using it. And then for others, it was daily use. So it was understanding your different customers and the segments and what healthy engagement looks like. So there's a bit of nuance in all of that, but I think that's the fun part. And that's when you get to marry the quantitative side of things with the qualitative side of things. And that was, I think you discovered that by having conversations with those customers directly, right?
Oh, yeah. Lots of conversations. All
right. I'm going to keep us moving. We've talked about what a healthy customer looks like, but how do you actually go about measuring that? What are the ways that, if you're watching this now, someone that's watching this could maybe get started measuring customer health? Where would you suggest they start?
I'd be actually doing my own health score, which you can do with using a tool, or you can actually do it yourself. So for me, I'd be setting up your engagement scores, your account scores. I would have a framework of my retention metrics, analysing my churn and my renewal rates, that I have a systemised process for that. I would be also looking at my feature usage and my activation rates, because if you onboard people well, you're more likely to keep them. And of course, you'd have your feedback loops operating between your support, your sales people, and then, of course, I would always have my early warning systems, which we did. We had a churn management plan, which we actually looked at all subscriptions at least 3 months out to check they were on track.
So that's a good segue into what we wanted to talk about next, was like, why does this matter? And you mentioned an early warning system, and that's an early warning system that a customer, an account, a user may be decreasing in engagement or usage and basically giving you signals that they might leave and stop paying you, really, if we're being honest here, right? So early warning systems is a way of getting ahead of things, being a bit more proactive instead of reacting when a customer leaves and trying to chase them down and understand why.
Yeah.
Can we be a bit more proactive and predictive about what's coming? But why ultimately does that matter? Like, why do we pay attention to customer health? Why should someone watching this pay attention to customer health signals and scores?
Well, because if you don't connect your dots, you are probably leaving opportunities on the table, and you are potentially not being proactive enough to drive your retention, your advocacy, and your revenue growth. It's as simple as that. It is a platform for all those things: revenue, satisfaction, and advocacy, that someone talks about your product.
Yeah. I think just reflecting on my personal journey through working in SaaS, I definitely had very siloed ways of looking at all of this. It's like you got a new customer, you onboarded that customer, and then usually it was somebody else's problem to get them to renew. But looking at it, and what you just said there, I think is really important to underscore, is that there's this ripple effect of having a happy customer, and that is that they stick around longer, so lifetime value goes up. That advocacy thing, which is really hard to measure, but that's word of mouth. Or if they leave where they're working today and go somewhere else, do they bring you with them? And then there's also, we hear a lot of people talking about net dollar retention or net revenue retention. Are you growing that account? And if they're not healthy and happy, then the odds are no. They may not leave, but you may shrink revenue
Yeah.
at an
Yeah. And
account
that's
level,
why
which
the
is also,
advocacy is actually important, because it's not also if they leave and go somewhere else so they talk to their mate. It's actually within the company. Can you actually
yeah.
spread your product usage, expand your product usage within your teams? So, to me, it's just one big connect the dot exercise, and the skill for
Mm,
yourself to work out which levers do you pull first. So you've got to understand your complexity to actually reach your more simplistic actions. And in
yeah.
saying this, it's much easier when you're just kind of scaling, you're finding a sticky point and stuff. It's much easier if you get all of it in place then, and then as you scale up. And then, if you make so much money, you can spend a fortune on a very, very sophisticated tool. Yes.
But until then, you can get these signals, and I think that's a really important thing to stress too. Is that this isn't out of reach of everybody. We know people that do this manually. You can use spreadsheets and all that sort of stuff, which is pretty time consuming. Last thing I'll say on that, like why customer health matters. I think it's who does it matter to, and I think it applies to pretty much every team across the company. I said that earlier, but I think it's important for product to understand what customer health looks like for them as well. And so every team can actually have a different definition of what customer health means. I think what it's done for me personally is made me aware of what that means, and sort of getting a unified view of what customer health actually means across the company and to different teams has been really helpful.
And I think I've now view it as a strategy rather than just a metric, because it's very easy to just get numbers. Oh my God, you get your little board and you think, oh, they're doing that. And then you kind of go, well, so what? So for me, it's actually the strategy around the insights is actually where the king hit is.
So can you explain that real quick? What do you mean by strategy?
So all of what we've been talking about is the strategy of which bits are you going to focus on in your business, in terms of putting how much you're going to actually look and explore on this with your data, how many resources you're going to be putting, for example, into your retention strategy. If you've got a churn problem, how are you going to be doing that? How does the insights you get from your data drive the strategy for your product development? So for me, it's about you get these insights, which allows you to make decisions in multiple places in your business, which then drives what you focus on, what you resource, and what you put your teams onto working on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. And obviously something that we believe in big time here is customer health, looking at it across a company. How engaged are they with the product? Are you measuring health scores in particular, retention rates, churn rates, whatever you want to call that, and how people are behaving with your products? If you haven't actually answered this question for yourself, I would definitely encourage you to spend some time thinking about what does a healthy customer look like within our business, and then even separate that out amongst different teams. What does product want to see? What does customer success want to see? Support? What is healthy for these different parts of the business? And go have a look at that and have a think about it. And as always, if you want to reach out to us, you can leave a comment below or come find us at coil.com if you have any questions about health scores and to be SaaS, customer engagement, that sort of stuff. With that, I think we're going to link some stuff down in the description below. We might have some account health or customer health frameworks to put in that. Otherwise, I think that's it for the week. Kate, anything to close us out with?
That's it. And more sales to you, people.